Let's get started. You first of all choose your student. I'm on my master sheet, and you choose which student's information you want to look at by simply clicking on the drop field and choosing a different student. And by the way, this is all just dummy data, so there's student 1, student 2, and so forth. Student 3, Kinsey, so forth. Let's take a look back at student 1. So I'm looking at the aggregated data from all of my chapters, chapter 1 through 10, my pre-tests and my post-tests. And over on this final column here, I can see how they've done on each particular test. This is their average. The average is calculated by these ones and zeros. If they got a problem correct, they get a 1. If they got it incorrect, they get a 0. So that information is actually hand entered onto the spreadsheet by the teachers. So I'm looking at Ashley, and my second sheet here is a graphical representation of that data. Now you'll see that all these chapter 5, pretest, post-test, chapter 6, they're all the same, and that's because I've copied and pasted data just to build the sheet. So going back to my master, here I am, I'm looking at Ashley, and if I want to look at a different student during parent-teacher conference, I choose student 8. Okay, now I'm looking at Caden, and there's Caden's information to share with his family. So that's the two sheets created basically for assessing how we've done and be able to share with parents. Now I can also do an analysis by student. This is a pivot table that I've created. This pivot table has a couple of features. Right now I'm looking at chapter 1, and I'm looking at chapter 1 data. Here's my students for teacher 1. That then is graphed over here, and I can take a look at all of how the students are doing on chapter 1. Come back over to my pivot table. If I want to change to chapter 2, I simply change the range to chapter 2. Now I'm looking at completely different data. Come over here to my student graph. Same set of kids, different data. Now, if I want to look at a different teacher, I come down here and I say I want to look at teacher 2. Now I'm looking at the data for teacher 2. I'm still on chapter 2, but looking at teacher 2, and notice a whole new set of kids. So this is my graphical representation of how we're doing by student if we want to do this analysis with the pivot table. I also have another pivot table set up here that does analysis by class, and that's showing my teacher 1, 2, 3, the average on the pretest, the average on the post-test, my grand totals for the whole third grade class, and if this was a third grade, for instance, and how many students are being assessed. This is my class graph showing me this is how we did teacher 1, pretest, post-test, teacher 2, pretest, post-test, teacher 3, and so forth. Of course, that's all calculated off of the information pulling from, well, in this case, we're looking just again at chapter 2. And if I wanted to see how we did on chapter 1 or chapter 3, I'll go to chapter 3, for instance, different set of data and a different graph. Okay, so going back now to take a look at the chapters, how do these work? Well, I have all my students in here, and let's take a look at this first row here. I'm looking at how this student, Ashley, did on the question 1 through 20. She's got 1s and 0s depending on whether she got it correct. And this calculates, notice that's the calculation of the average of G4 to Z4. That's just giving me the average of how she did. Now take a look over here, at this particular question. This is averaging from G5 to G69. So what that's saying to me is that that's G69. If I come all the way down to the bottom of my spreadsheet, we're actually looking at the data of how it's averaging out these particular scores. This is averaging out the, so this is showing me how students did on a question. And I can see, wow, I really didn't do very well on this question or this question, so I need to either look at the question or really hit and teach that concept. Now this strand row here is interesting because that information there represents how the students did on that pair of colored questions, okay? This is how they did on this strand. And notice the formula there is averaging I4 to I68. It's averaging how the students did from here, this set of data right in here. As I scroll across now, I can take a look at post-test data. I'm scrolling up and down through the list of students and seeing how they did on Chapter 1. Now, one of the things I can do, because I've got some data repeated in here to help me do some different things, I could come in here and decide to hide this set of data. I'm selecting that set of rows, clicking, and hiding those columns. And if I do that, now when I scroll from side to side, I've got a little less data to have to look at. And now I can actually, in this view, I can go, okay, here's student 9. Let me scroll up to the top. Here's student 1, Ashley. She got a 50% chapter 1 on her pretest and an 80% on her post-test. Well, let's verify that. Come back to my master sheet. Let's switch to Ashley. And there's Ashley. And yes, she got a 50% and 80%. So in a real quick demonstration here, I am showing you all of the features of this assessment. Starting with your master, you get to see your student progress. You can do an analysis by student based on different chapters and on different teachers. Graph that data. An analysis by class based on the different chapters and the class graph. And of course, it's all the magic comes out of these 10 chapters. I can go to chapter 6 here. It's basically going to look the same as chapter 1. And each of these sheets, of course, has to be manipulated in order for it to enter the data in on all of these different sheets. I hope that helps. And if you want to use this, this is a publicly available template.